You are welcome to today's series on Exegetical, wherein we explore biblical languages to gaining intended meaning of the Bible text. Today we shall be considering the word heaven or heavens in the context of Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and 11, verse 4. While growing up in the Sunday school, I learned along with other children the story of the Tower of Babel. And what lingered until some level of maturity came was that the people were actually building the tower with the intention to meet God in the heavens and perhaps to challenge him. So God had to interrupt by scattering them abroad so that they won't gain access into the heaven. And more disturbing recently is the misconstruing of the same word heavens in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, as both referring to spiritual domain or including it. That is, including the three layers of heaven, so to say, like we divide, saying that, okay, the first layer is like some. The Bible did not clearly tell us that. But because Paul says that he went to the third heaven, so many people believe that the first will be this sky, then the upper one, maybe the spiritual domain where some powers and principalities dwell, and the third one, the place of God. We don't have clear scriptures that teaches that. So what we see is that we would often fall into error by means of word study fallacy anytime we intend to learn and apply the meaning of a word in the scripture outside the immediate context. It happens a lot. Even though the Hebrew word shamayim, you can see it here, shamayim here, right, may imply a spiritual domain, even where God lives, that's spiritually speaking. But the both contexts of Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 and 11 verse 4 do not imply nor connote it. It doesn't at all. They do not imply a domain where God lives or spiritual domain at all. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, it is glaring that the Bible was referring to the observable upper chamber of the earth, and to delimit its scope of understanding in Genesis chapter 1, 6 to 8, you will realize that God Himself, having made an expanse to cause a separation between the waters above and below, emphasized that the upper expanse in Hebrew word rakia, that is sky, is to be referred to as heaven. So that's a synonym. So that's to help us know that this particular heaven is not talking about spiritual domain. It's talking about what we can observe, what we can see up there. And in the case of Genesis chapter 11, verse 4, we cannot as well deduce that the people were building so as to access, so as to gain access into the space of God. Of course, we should know that we cannot physically travel upward to gain access into the place of God. It's not possible, all right? Like somebody say that when we think about heaven, well, we should not think about it in as a distance. Spiritual heaven, the domain of God, rather a dimension. That is what we are seeing here is this physical dimension, and when you talk about heaven of God, it's a spiritual dimension that we can even feel right now where we are. Of course, we know that it exists somewhere, but in a spiritual domain, not physical, not what we can, like some people traveled into the space and they were like thinking to get into, where God lives. That is practically impossible as far as the Bible is concerned. All right. So that's not possible. Thus, when the people said in Genesis chapter 11, verse 4, let us build a tower that is whose top reaches into the heaven, what they imply in our own contemporary understanding is a skyscraper. That's what we are talking about. And the purpose is even revealed in verse 4. It says that let us make for ourselves a name, let us remain here, lest we scatter abroad. Lest we are scattered abroad. That's what they are doing. They are preventing themselves from scattering. So they are building a very high tower to ensure that they can all be accommodated. That was what they are doing. So the only thing that they are doing here that causes God to intervene was because they were challenging the clear command of God to spread and fill the whole earth. Right. So the lesson I want us to learn here today is that we need to exercise a lot of diligence when we are doing word study, especially with the use of concordance, because I see a lot of mistakes when people use concordance. In the concordance, what it does is to gather all places where the scripture appears. I mean, when a word appears throughout the scriptures, like in the Old Testament and in the New. But the problem that you will not be able to sort out with concordance is that concordance will not tell you that this word may mean something else in another text. It just show you the meaning of the word, and if you are not careful, you will just apply that directly. All right. Always and carefully check a context. I mean, the immediate context to determine the meaning of any important word as may be intended by the passage and the author. It's very important that you check the immediate context first. All right. Be double sure that you are not importing or imposing an idea you were earlier taught, like I was taught about Genesis chapter 11, that people are actually gaining access into wanted to go and meet God in the heaven. All right. Be sure that you are not imposing or importing such idea or an interpretation you might have heard from a sermon or something you have read somewhere in a commentary, because not all commentaries are correct. So be careful that you're not importing, be careful that you're not imposing what you have earlier learned. In other words, always do your due diligence by checking up with the immediate context first. That's the primary thing, before considering any other material. Check what is it saying. Look at the text. Look at the limitation of the scope. Ensure that you are not adding to it. Ensure that you are not imposing your idea you have learned earlier. You wouldn't know that such idea is still with you. So be careful. Right. The heaven, what we have learned today is that the heaven in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and in the context of Genesis chapter 1, and the heaven in Genesis chapter 11 is the sky. All right, is the sky. All right, so be careful to exercise serious diligence in ensuring that you don't read into the scripture, or you don't import the meaning of that of this particular word uh, from another text into the text you are considering at the moment. God bless you. See you next time on Exegetical.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.